You see, something's going to happen.
What? What's going to happen?
Something wonderful.
What?
I understand how you feel. You see, it's all very clear to me now.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. In this episode, we're going to be talking about sacred lunar temples across time and cultures. Ancient civilizations around the world have built monumental temples and pyramids dedicated to moon deities or celestial forces, reflecting the profound significance of lunar worship and cosmic order in human history. This deep exploration focuses on four remarkable structures: the Huaca de la Luna in Peru, the Great Ziggurat of Ur in Mesopotamia, the Temple of Khonsu at Karnak in Egypt, and the Pyramid of the Moon at Teotihuacan in Mexico. Each site arose in a distinct culture and era, yet all served as grand ceremonial centers linked to the moon or moon gods, rich in symbolism, ritual, and myth. In this episode, we delve into the history, cultural context, religious beliefs, architectural features, excavations, modern legacy, and legends surrounding each sacred site. These ancient sites not only illuminate the people who built them, from the Mochi of Peru to the Sumerians, Egyptians, and the Teotihuacanos, but also highlight humanity's enduring fascination with the heavens and the divine. By examining academic findings and local lore alike, we gain a comprehensive view of how these lunar temples functioned as both practical centers of society and mystical nexuses of spiritual power. In a journey spanning continents and millennia, we will see how each monument story intertwines religion, power, art, and even the occult, leaving a legacy that still captivates scholars and seekers today. And first, we will start with Huaca de la Luna. The Huaca de la Luna, Spanish for Temple of the Moon, is a massive terraced adobe pyramid built by the Moche culture of Peru's north coast, roughly between 100 to 800 CE. Together with its companion, Huaca del Sol, Temple of the Sun, it formed the ceremonial heart of the ancient Moche capital city, which at its height, around 600 CE, may have housed 25,000 people. The Moche were a highly sophisticated civilization of the early intermediate period, known for their elaborate pottery, irrigation, engineering, and powerful religious rituals. They erected Huaca de la Luna against the backdrop of Cerro Blanco, a white sandstone mountain regarded as an Apu or sacred being. According to local legend, the temple's very origin is tied to this holy peak. When a two-headed serpent demon terrorized the valley, the mountain opened up to swallow the monster, saving the people. In gratitude, the Moche built the Huaca de la Luna to honor the protective mountain god. This myth, still told by villagers today, imbues the site with a lore of divine intervention and underscores how closely religion was linked to the natural landscape. The Huaca de la Luna was constructed in stages over centuries, with each new phase literally built atop the previous one. As excavators discovered, the pyramid contains a series of earlier smaller temples nested within, their colorful murals remarkably preserved inside the protective adobe layers. The external dimensions of the final structure are vast. The temple consists of multiple broad terraces and platforms made from millions of sun-dried mud bricks, adobes. Fascinatingly, many bricks bear distinct markings or symbols, over 100 different signs in total, which likely indicate the work crews or communities that produced them. Scholars suggest the bricks were signed in this way for accounting and perhaps to foster a healthy competition or sense of contribution among subject villages. Such collaboration hints at a large organized labor force under elite supervision. Indeed, the Huaca de la Luna and the Huaca del Sol together dominated the Moche urban center, reflecting a theocratic society where monumental construction served both religious and political ends. The Spanish conquistadors heavily looted and damaged the Huaca del Sol in the 17th century, but Huaca del Luna was left relatively untouched by the Spaniards. As a result, Huaca de la Luna has yielded far more information in modern times. Professional archaeological excavations began in the 1990s, led by Peruvian archaeologists Santiago Ueda and Ricardo Morales, among others. They uncovered tons of artifacts and art, revealing the site's function and history. We now know that the Huaca de la Luna primarily served ceremonial and religious purposes, in contrast to Huaca del Sol's administrative and residential roles. Within Huaca de la Luna's multi-level complex, archaeologists identified different activity areas. A central and southern platform that held high-status burials, likely priests and religious elite buried with fine ceramics, and a lower plaza and stone outcrop used for ritual combat and human sacrifice. The northern platform, once richly decorated, was unfortunately destroyed by looters in the past. The Moki had a vivid religious life, centered on appeasing powerful deities associated with natural forces like weather and fertility. At Huaca de la Luna, the most dramatic rituals were human sacrifices carried out to invoke divine favor, especially in response to environmental stresses such as droughts or El Niño floods. The temple's polychrome friezes and wall murals, many well preserved, depict fearsome gods and ceremonial scenes. Chief among these is the Fang deity Ai-Apek, A-I-A-P-A-E-C, called the Decapitator, who appears as a half-human, half-beast figure, brandishing severed heads. The Moki believed such gods demanded blood offerings. On the eastern plaza, by a black rock face, priests performed ritual combat. Captive warriors or chosen combatants fought in gladiator-like duels. The losers, often young male warriors, were then sacrificed atop the Huaca, their throats slit, bodies dismembered or defleshed. Priestly attendants would present the victim's blood to the gods, as vividly shown in Moki art where priestesses offer goblets of blood to supernatural beings. The corpses were rolled off the pyramid to lie broken in the courtyard below, left for vultures and the elements. Such treatment, denial of burial, mutilation of bodies, indicates these were war captives or outsiders, not esteemed community members. This aligns with the recent scientific studies. Chemical analysis of bones and teeth from 70 sacrificial victims at Huaca de la Luna showed many came from distant valleys, supporting the idea that they were war captives taken in conflict with rival groups. As one researcher put it, they look like war captives, not local elites. Over time, the geographic origin of victims seemed to have shifted farther away. Inside the temple, the Moki created stunning paintings that embodied their cosmology. The walls were once painted in bright hues of red, yellow, white, black, and blue. One prominent frieze shows rows of spider-like supernatural figures and warriors, possibly reenacting myth battles or processions. Another mural features a giant sea monster or serpent. These artistic motifs reflect Moki mythic themes, such as the mountain snake legend mentioned earlier, or the presence of the wrinkle-faced god identified by Inca descendants. Importantly, archaeologists have found evidence that Moki priests at Huaca de la Luna used hallucinogenic San Pedro cactus during rituals. The mescaline-induced trance may have helped priests communicate with their fierce gods, perhaps explaining the often terrifying, otherworldly imagery on the temple walls, the half-human, half-spider deity. Through these rituals, sacrifices, blood offerings, and trance ceremonies, the Moki sought to secure agricultural fertility and climatic stability. Their arid environment was prone to droughts punctuated by catastrophic El Niño rains. Indeed, climate research indicates that around 536 CE, a super El Niño triggered 30 years of floods followed by 30 years of drought, which corresponds with the weakening of Moki society. The massive outpourings of sacrifices at Huaca de la Luna may have been attempts to placate the angry gods of weather, though ultimately these efforts failed to prevent environmental collapse. Huaca de la Luna's most striking features are its multicolored reliefs and the sheer scale of construction. The temple was built entirely of adobe mud bricks, with an estimated 50 million bricks used between it and Huaca del Sol. Up close, the walls reveal alternating levels of construction, like a layer cake of religious phases. In some sections, you can see earlier murals buried by later expansions, giving archaeologists a stratified timeline of Moche art and iconography. One famous mural inside depicts a giant face of Apec with gaping mouth and feline fangs, surrounded by a withering border of serpents and enigmatic figures, hence the nickname Decapitator God. Other panels show processions of priests or warriors, and supernatural creatures like dragons or spiders, all rendered in a bold, flat style with red as a dominant color. The iconography encodes Moche cosmology. Spiders and snakes relate to water and earth. Decapitation relates to renewing fertility. The mountain is ever present as a sacred form. Even the placement of the Huaca is symbolic. It nestles at the base of Cerro Blanco, integrating a natural sacred mountain as part of the ritual landscape. The Moche likely viewed the Huaca and mountain together as the dwelling of gods. The legend of the mountain opening to eat the serpent suggests the mountain itself was personified as a deity. Thus, the Huaca de la Luna was not literally a moon temple in the sense of observing lunar phases. Rather, it was a temple where the moon, or more precisely, the nighttime, the water, the fertility associated with the moon and weather, was honored through the mountain god and the blood of sacrifices. The Spanish name Temple of the Moon might have been inspired by local lore or simply to pair it with the Temple of the Sun across the way. Some scholars surmise the Moche Huacas were aligned to astronomical events, but direct evidence is limited. What is clear is that the Huaca de la Luna's orientation was strongly tied to Cerro Blanco immediately behind it. In essence, the pyramid's facade faces the mountain, as if offering itself to the sacred peak. This is akin to Teotihuacan's Pyramid of the Moon mirroring the Cerro Gordo mountain, a common ancient practice of aligning temples with prominent landscape features to enhance their sacred power. Modern excavation of a Huaca de la Luna has been exceptionally fruitful. In the 1990s and 2000s, Peruvian and international teams uncovered plazas filled with sacrificial remains. In one famous 1995 find, archaeologist Steve Bourget encountered a mass grave of 42 young men at the foot of the temple's sacrificial rock, all apparently killed in one ritual event. The skeletons showed signs of violent death, skulls crushed by blunt force and dismemberment. Some skulls were even turned into skull caps for drinking, a grisly practice also depicted in Moche pottery. These discoveries corroborated what Moche art had long hinted. The Moche elite conducted large-scale programmatic sacrifices during ceremonies, likely tied to phenomena like solar eclipses, torrential rains, or political installations. More recent bioarchaeological studies, such as by John Verano and J. Maria Toyne, used oxygen isotope analysis on victims' teeth to determine their geographic origin. The results, as mentioned, showed a significant portion were not local to the Moche capital but hailed from far-flung regions, supporting the idea of expanding warfare and princess exchanges among Moche centers. Even high-status women buried at the site appeared to come from other valleys, hinting at patrilocal marriage alliances. Such scientific detective work has greatly enriched our understanding of Moche social dynamics and the role of Huaca de la Luna in a broader political sphere. The artifacts recovered include fine ceramics portraying the very rituals performed on the site, as well as textiles, metal objects, and tools. Particularly invaluable are the Moche stirrup spout pots painted with sacrificial scenes, bound prisoners with ropes, priests in elaborate costumes wielding knives, and cups catching blood. It's as if the Moche left a pictorial record to be decoded alongside the archaeological record. Some tombs found within the Huaca held Moche priests or dignitaries, buried with ornaments and effigy vessels. These reveal that despite the gruesome sacrifices, the Moche also buried their own elite reverently within the temples, likely to deify them or place them closer to the gods in death. Today, Huaca de la Luna stands as one of the most best-preserved pre-Columbian temples in Peru. After centuries of abandonment and partial burial by desert sands, it was open to public visitors only in 2011, once stabilization efforts made it safe. The World Monuments Fund and Peru's Ministry of Culture have undertaken significant conservation projects, shoring up the adobe terraces and conserving the delicate murals. Walkways and a site museum have been established so tourists can view the multicolored friezes up close. In recent decades, the site has become an educational window into Moche civilization, often compared in importance to Machu Picchu. It also has occasionally attracted spiritual and New Age visitors, drawn by the vibes of the ancient ritual center. Some modern spiritualists speculate that places like Huaca de la Luna sit on earth energy nodes or ley lines, though there is no scientific evidence of that. What is tangible is the alignment with Cerro Blanco and the intentional sacred geography crafted by the Moche. The legends and lore of Huaca de la Luna continue to captivate the imagination. Local storytellers still recount how the mountains saved their ancestors, marking the rock with a black scar where it opened and shut on the serpent. And the memory of the Moche priests' magic lives on. For instance, shamanic practitioners in the region today sometimes invoke the Moche and their Huacas as sources of ancient power. While academic researchers focus on pottery shards and isotope ratios, local communities see Huaca de la Lunas as part of their cultural heritage and even supernatural landscape. It's a place where, in folk belief, spirits of sacrificed warriors might still roam, or where the mountain spirit watches over the valley. Thus, Huaca de la Luna exemplifies an archaeological site that is at once a treasure trove of scientific data and a living wellspring of myth. The Huaca de la Luna was a ceremonial pyramid that played a pivotal role in Moche religion and society. Through its imposing architecture and vivid art, it mediated between the Moche people and their gods, especially during desperate times of climate upheaval. The temple saw lavish ceremonies, gruesome sacrifices of war captives to nourish the gods with blood, and likely periodic festivals to renew the land's fertility. Abandoned around the 8th century as the Moche civilization declined, possibly due to environmental disasters and internal strife, the Huacas de Moche site was later used by subsequent cultures, the Chimu and then briefly the Inca, before the Spanish conquest. Centuries of wind and sun reduced its outer layers to a crumbling brown mound, concealing the polychrome wonders inside. Thanks to archaeology, we have peeled back those layers to reveal a striking portrait of a people whom the boundary between the natural and supernatural was thin, and who believed that through ritual bloodshed atop their moon temple, they could harness divine forces to sustain their world. As we leave the Huaca de la Luna, we will now head over to the Ziggurat of Ur. In the desert of southern Iraq rises a huge brown mass of brick, the Great Ziggurat of Ur, an ancient Mesopotamian temple built over 4,000 years ago. This majestic step pyramid was the spiritual center of the Sumerian city of Ur, dedicated to the moon god Nana, known as Sin in Akkadian. Today, its partially reconstructed lower tiers and grand staircase give a glimpse of its original glory and the advanced society that created it. The Ziggurat of Ur has the distinction of being one of the largest and best preserved ziggurats of Mesopotamia. It also carries layers of cultural memory. It is linked to the biblical patriarch Abraham, who, according to tradition, was born in Ur and was restored by kings in antiquity and modernity alike. It survived wars and even hosted an interfaith prayer by Pope Francis in 2021. The ziggurat's long history and symbolism encapsulate the rise of urban civilization and organized religion in the Fertile Crescent. The ziggurat was built around 2100 BCE by King Ur-Nammu, founder of the third dynasty of Ur, and completed by his son King Shulgi. Ur-Nammu's reign saw a renaissance of Sumerian culture, and building a monumental temple was both an act of piety and a statement of royal power. The ziggurat formed the base of a temple complex within Ur's sacred precinct. Its Sumerian ceremonial name was E-Lemon-Ni-Guru, house whose foundation creates terror, or perhaps house of the foundation of God's dwelling. Ur-Nammu dedicated this structure in honor of Nana or Sin, the patron deity of Ur. Nana was the god of the moon, depicted as a wise provider of fertility and timekeeping. Atop the ziggurat, a shrine would have housed a statue of Nana, and it was here that priests performed rites and presented offerings on behalf of the city. The ziggurat's towering height meant the shrine soared above the plain, a bridge between earth and heaven, Originally, it was said to be about 30 meters high, dominating the city skyline. Ordinary citizens likely only saw the lower terraces. Only clergy and perhaps the royal family ascended to the summit. As one scholar analogized, the ziggurat and its crowning temple would have been visible for miles around, like the spire of a medieval cathedral, guiding travelers and awing pilgrims from afar. Ur's economy and society were strongly tied to this temple. Records on clay tablets indicate the Nana temple owned vast herds of cattle and sheep and received tithes of grain, which were redistributed to support clergy and feed the populace. Thus, the ziggurat complex functioned not only as a religious spot but also an administrative center for storage and redistribution, a cornerstone of the city-state's economy. It's likely that the citizens of Ur brought their agricultural surplus to the temple storehouse and in return received regular rations, bread, beer, dates, a practice attested in other Mesopotamian temples. In this way, devotion and daily life were intertwined. Serving the moon god also meant feeding the people. The great ziggurat stood intact for over 1,000 years. In the 6th century BCE, the Babylonian king, Nabonidus, carried out a major restoration of the dilapidated ziggurat. Nabonidus, an antiquarian of sorts, claimed in inscriptions that he dug to the foundation and rebuilt it in 7 stages. By doing so, he was consciously emulating Ur's ancient kings and honoring the moon god whom he particularly revered. After the Babylonian period, Ur and its ziggurat fell into obscurity. The city was abandoned by the late 1st millennium BCE as shifting rivers made the area less habitable. Windblown sand engulfed much of the ziggurat's upper structure over time. Fast forward to the 19th and 20th century CE, when the site was rediscovered and excavated. The remains of the ziggurat was identified in 1850 by British traveler William Loftus, and full-scale excavations were led by Sir Leonard Woolley in the 1920s to 30s. Woolley's work, a joint venture of the British Museum and the University of Pennsylvania, not only uncovered the ziggurat's base and dimensions, but also famously found the royal tombs of Ur nearby, rich with gold and artifacts. Woolley's dig revealed the ziggurat's construction. A core of sun-baked mud bricks faced with a thick skin of fire bricks set in bitumen. This waterproofing bitumen layer protected the mud core from the rain and gave the structure great durability. The massive rectangular platform measured roughly 64 by 45 meters at its base and had 3 levels of terraces originally raising about 70 to 100 feet high. The ziggurat was orientated precisely to true north, reflecting the Sumerian sophisticated grasp of alignment and perhaps cosmology. 3 monumental staircases of 100 steps each climbed the front facade, 1 central and 1 on each side, converging at a gate on the first terrace. Then a single stairway continued to the second terrace, and on to the top platform where the holy sanctuary stood. The image is that of a grand staged mountain, a man-made sacred mountain, which in the flat floodplain of Mesopotamia served as an artificial high place for the god to dwell. In Sumerian mythology, gods often met on mountaintops. Since natural mountains were far to the east, ziggurats fulfilled that role in the cities. The top temple, sometimes called the Jiparu, if it was like later moon temples in Ur, unfortunately has not survived. However, a few glazed bricks of deep blue color have been found on the summit ruins, hinting that the shrine may have been ornately decorated, possibly with a facade of blue glazed brick or tile to represent the sky. In it would have been the statue of Nana, along with rich furnishings. During religious festivals, likely tied to the lunar cycle, the priests would bring offerings up the ziggurat and perhaps conduct ceremonies on the platform. One can imagine the silver light of the full moon shining directly upon the high temple of the moon god, an awe-inspiring nocturnal sight for ancient Ur. Nana, or Sin, the moon god, was one of the chief deities in the Sumerian pantheon, considered the son of Enlil, air god, and father of Utu, Shamash, sun god, and Inanna Ishtar, the Venus goddess. Nana, or Sin, the moon god, was one of the chief deities in the Sumerian pantheon, considered the son of Enlil, the air god, and father of Utu or Shamash, the sun god, and Inanna or Ishtar, the Venus goddess. He was depicted as a wise, benevolent god, often symbolized by the crescent moon. The people of Ur believed Nana watched over their city and flocks, making the herds fertile and the harvests plentiful. His temple was called Igishirgal, House of the Great Light, and the ziggurat below was essentially a means to elevate that house closer to the heavens. In Mesopotamian religion, a god's essence could reside in their cult statue, which was tended to daily with food, incense, and prayer. So in Ur, the priests would offer sacrifices of bulls and lambs to Nana, burn cedar resin for its fragrant smoke, and perform hymns and rituals composed in Sumerian. The king, as the high steward of the god, would partake in ceremonies, especially during New Year festivals or eclipses. An interesting facet is that the lunar calendar was important for timing rituals and administrative schedules. Being the city of the moon deity, Ur would have been a center of astronomical observation. It's plausible that the ziggurat's height allowed priests to observe the moon and stars without obstruction. Those ziggurats were not simple observatories. The cosmic connection was inherent. The structure itself, with its layered stages, might symbolically represent a cosmic mountain or bridge with a number of levels possibly holding astrological meaning. Some ziggurats had 7 levels aligning with 7 heavenly planets. Ur had 3 main levels originally, expanded to 7, in Nabonidus' restoration, perhaps to align with that later cosmic scheme. The idea of reaching heaven via a tall structure finds resonance in the later biblical story of the Tower of Babel. While the Tower of Babel is usually associated with Babylon's ziggurat, some early interpreters saw any great ziggurat as emblematic of that tale. The Ziggurat of Ur, being so imposing and ancient, was sometimes linked to Babel by travelers, though there's no direct connection beyond the same type of building. What Ur ziggurat does emphasize is the Mesopotamian aspiration to connect with the divine vertically. They called ziggurats Hersak, sacred mountain, or Sekatu, height, pinnacle. Climbing the ziggurat stairway was likely a ritual enactment of ascending to the realm of the gods. Only the privileged priests and rulers could make that climb, effectively bringing prayers from the people below up to the gods dwelling above. Leonard Woolley's excavation in the 1920s not only mapped the ziggurat, but also attempted a kind of restoration. The lowest level and staircase that visitors see today were actually rebuilt in the 1980s under Saddam Hussein's patronage. Saddam, seeking to link himself to Iraq's ancient glory, ordered a partial reconstruction using modern bricks over the base. This is why today the ziggurat's first terrace looks relatively sharp-edged and new, with inscribed bricks stamped in Saddam's name, like your Namu did in his time. The upper levels remain mostly ruined, leaving a flat top where once the temple stood. Woolley had found that the original ziggurat had 3 tiers. Nabonidus' additions perhaps added more height, but much of those top layers eroded away. The site suffered some damage during modern conflicts. In the 1991 Gulf War, Iraqi and Allied forces fought near Ur. Bullet holes, over 400 of them, still pockmarked the ziggurat's walls, and bomb craters dot the vicinity. Fortunately, the structure was robust enough to survive without catastrophic collapse. By 2008, the ziggurat was protected as an archaeological park, and efforts have been made to maintain it. One intriguing aspect is that near the ziggurat, Woolley uncovered what may be the world's oldest museum, a 6th century BCE museum of antiquities collected by Princess Enegaldi, a daughter of Nabonidus. She curated artifacts from much older periods in a building adjacent to the ziggurat, complete with labels in multiple languages. This indicates a conscious awareness of the site's antiquity even in ancient times. So Ur ziggurat has been an object of fascination across ages, from Nabonidus' archaeologists to Enegaldi's museum to modern researchers. In recent years, with Iraq becoming more accessible, the Ziggurat of Ur has seen notable visitors. In March 2021, Pope Francis traveled to Ur and held an interfaith prayer service at a spot in view of the ziggurat, invoking the shared heritage of Abraham for Christians, Muslims, and Jews. This event underscored Ur's significance as the birthplace of Abraham in biblical tradition. According to the book of Genesis, Abraham lived in Ur before being called by God to journey to Canaan. In Jewish, Christian, and Islamic stories, Abraham's rejection of idolatry is sometimes set against the backdrop of Ur's pagan worship of the moon god. Legend has it Abraham may have even smashed the idols in Ur, or was persecuted by King Nimrod for refusing to worship the celestial gods. While these are not historical accounts, they highlight how later monotheistic faiths viewed places like the Ziggurat of Ur as symbols of mankind's early religious strivings, later supplanted by the worship of one god. The Pope's visit in 2021 saw him speak in front of the Ziggurat about unity and peace among religions, truly a historic moment bridging 4,000 years of spiritual history. The Ziggurat's design is both functional and symbolic. Functionally, the solid core of mud brick, millions of bricks strong, provided mass, while the sloped sides and thick bitumen-bonded brick casing gave stability and drainage. The architects ingeniously built drains into the terraces to channel away rainwater and ventilation holes through the outer walls to allow moisture to evaporate, preventing the mud brick core from softening. These ancient engineers understood that a massive mud structure could be weakened by water, so they countered that with technology. The burnt bricks used in the exterior were standard size, 30 by 30 by 7 centimeters, and heavy, up to 15 kilograms each. An estimated 720,000 baked bricks were used in the first terrace alone. This represents a huge communal effort, like a combination of conscripted labor and temple workers. Each brick often had cuneiform inscriptions naming Ur-Nammu or Shulgi as the builder, essentially early builders' plaques. Visually, the ziggurat would have been impressive. Its sides likely had a slight inward slope, giving a tapered look upward. The sun-baked brick might have been plastered and whitewashed in parts. Some reconstructions suggest the stages could have been painted in different colors to represent planetary spheres, a feature attested in later ziggurats. We know from Nabonidus' account that by his time, much of Ur's ziggurat was ruinous except the lowest stage. He added more stages. Whether he colored them is unknown. If he truly made it to 7th stage it is now, he might have been imitating the famous 7-tiered ziggurat of Babylon. This is speculative for Ur, but it shows how Mesopotamians associated ziggurats with the cosmos. Some scholars think ziggurats symbolize the cosmic mountain connecting the earth to the sky, and possibly their heights or tiers correlated with celestial zones. The Great Ziggurat had no eternal chambers that we know of. It was a solid platform. The actual temple for worship was the small building on top. Interestingly, the complex around the ziggurat included other buildings, a courtyard, storehouses, the residence of the high priestess of Nana, often a royal daughter would serve in this role, and administrative offices. Willie discovered the Chaperu, a building adjacent where these priestesses were buried and where offerings to the gods' consorts were made. Thus, the ziggurat was the literal high point, but part of a larger sacred campus that managed both the gods' cults and economic resources. Beyond archaeology, the Ziggurat of Ur has captured public imagination. When U.S. and coalition forces were stationed in Iraq in the 2000s near the Talil Air Base, they often visited the ziggurat as a tourist excursion. Photos of soldiers climbing the ancient stairs with their rifles slung over their shoulders circulated widely. The juxtaposition of modern warfighters in one of humanity's oldest monumental buildings was striking. It symbolized for many the enduring nature of cultural heritage amid conflict. The site came under Iraqi control and has been proposed as a tourism hub as Iraq rebuilds. In 2013, authorities opened a small visitor center. By preserving and promoting Ur, Iraq honors its position as one of the cradles of civilization. Legends still swirl around the ziggurat. Local Iraqi folklore, for instance, speaks of jinns, spirits, that might haunt the ancient ruins at night. Some of the local guides talk of a curse that befalls those who disrespect the site. While such stories are anecdotal, they add to the aura of the ziggurat as a place where the past is alive. New Age and fringe theorists have also woven Ur's ziggurat into their ideas, claiming, for example, that it aligns with other pyramids on energy grids, or that its shape has mystical power. There is no scientific basis for ley lines through Ur, but the pattern of pyramidal structures globally does intrigue many. It's often pointed out that Ur's ziggurat lies near the 30 degrees north latitude, roughly the same as the pyramids of Giza and other sites, though this might be coincidental. From a scholarly perspective, the Ziggurat of Ur exemplifies the early development of state religion and monumental architecture. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, as part of the Awar of southern Iraq, which includes Ur, and a symbol of Iraqi national pride. In the imagination of many, it stands as a testament to human ingenuity in the service of faith. As one museum publication eloquently put it, when Abraham, if he indeed lived in Ur around 1800 BC, walked in the city, he looked up daily to a ziggurat which was then a finished monument, already centuries old. That continuity, from early Bronze Age through biblical times to the present day, is what makes the Great Ziggurat of Ur so powerful a monument. It has seen the ebb and flow of empires, the evolution of religion from polytheism to monotheism, and the dawn of history itself. Writing in cuneiform was invented not far from its shadow. To stand before it is to connect with the very early chapters of urban human history. And now, as we wrap up the ziggurat, we will head on over to the Temple of Khonsu in Karnak. Ancient Egypt's Karnak temple complex in Thebes, modern Luxor, is famous for its grand temple of Amun with colossal columns. Nestled within that complex, however, is a smaller but remarkably well-preserved shrine to a different deity, the Temple of Khonsu, dedicated to the Egyptian moon god. Built during the New Kingdom around 1190 BCE and added onto in later periods, the Temple of Khonsu offers a nearly complete example of a medium-sized Egyptian temple and illuminates the role of lunar worship in Egypt's religious life. Khonsu was the son of Amun and Mut in the Theban triad, revered as a god of the moon, time, and healing. His temple at Karnak, though smaller than Amun's, was constructed and decorated by pharaohs over centuries, resulting in a beautifully layered structure that has survived with its roof intact, its relief still visible, and even some ancient paint in shaded areas. The Temple of Khonsu stands in the southwest corner of Karnak's precinct of Amun-Re, not far from Karnak's massive first pylon. It was originally built by Pharaoh Ramses III, circa 1186 to 1155 BCE, during Egypt's 20th dynasty. Ramses III erected the main building on the site of an earlier structure, possibly from the late 18th dynasty or earlier. The temple follows the classic New Kingdom plan. One approaches through a monumental gateway, a pylon, enters an open imperial-style courtyard surrounded by columns, then passes into a hypostyle hall with columns, and finally into the dim inner sanctuaries which house the cult statue of Khonsu. The whole temple is orientated along an axis and aligned with the processional route that leads to Luxor Temple to the south. In fact, the gateway of Ptolemy in front of Khonsu's temple formed the start of the famous Avenue of Sphinx that connected Karnak and Luxor. Pilgrims in antiquity could walk from Luxor Temple northward along this Sphinx-lined avenue and arrive at the front of Khonsu's temple, symbolically linking Khonsu's domain to his father Amun's domain at Karnak. Construction and embellishment of Khonsu's temple continued well after Ramses III. High Priestess Herihor, who effectively ruled Thebes after the collapse of central authority around 1070 BCE, left inscribed reliefs in the temple's forecourt, suggesting he completed or redecorated portions. During Egypt's late periods, the temple saw further additions. The hypostyle hall was built under Nectanebo I, the 30th dynasty, 380 BCE, and the great entrance gateway in front of the temple was constructed by Ptolemy III in the 3rd century, along with an enclosure wall. The Ptolemaic Gate is a freestanding structure that features plaques of Ptolemy III and reliefs showing him offering to the gods. It served as a grand entrance separate from Karnak's main pylons, highlighting that Khonsu's temple was somewhat autonomous and had its own sacred enclosure. Over time, blocks from earlier eras were reused in the temple. Scholars have noted inverted or mismatched relief blocks in certain walls, indicating later reconstruction or restoration using spolia. Despite that, the temple is one of the most intact at Karnak, with its roof still covering the sanctuaries and even 2 ancient baboon statues found inside. Baboons were sacred to moon deities like Thoth and perhaps Khonsu. The pair discovered here are thought to date to Seti I, 1290 BCE, presumably from the prior structure and left as venerable objects. The Temple of Khonsu is a textbook example of a small Egyptian cult temple. Approaching it, one first sees the first pylon, a sandstone gateway about 34.5 meters wide and 18 meters tall. Today, only the 2 tower-like sides of the pylon stand, and they are not fully intact, but enough remains to convey its scale. The pylon is decorated with reliefs of Ramses III, smiting enemies and presenting offerings to Khonsu, Amun, and Mut. Passing through the pylon, you enter the courtyard, open to the sky. This court has a colonnade on each side, forming a rectangle. In Ramses III's day, common people might have been allowed onto the courtyard during festivals to witness rituals from a distance. At the far end of the courtyard stands a columned porch or portico with 4 columns, leading into the hypostyle hall. The hypostyle hall of Khonsu's temple is small, especially in comparison to Karnak's main hypostyle, but it features papyrus bud column capitals and once held colorful painted scenes on its walls. In the gloom of the hall, one still sees Ramses IV and later pharaohs making offerings to Khonsu and other gods. Proceeding deeper, one passes through a series of vestibules that decrease in size and elevation, a typical feature meant to transition from the public outer areas to the most sacred, darkest inner sanctum. Finally, at the far end is the sanctuary, Holy of Holies, where the cult statue of Khonsu would have stood on a bark, boat-shaped shrine or pedestal. Surrounding the sanctuary are smaller side chambers for storage of ritual equipment and perhaps chapels for associated deities. Because the roof remains, one can still experience this spatial effect. Sunlight in the open court, dimness in the hypostyle, and darkness in the sanctuary, illustrating the Egyptian metaphor of creation, light to dark as one goes in, like entering the womb of the temple to commune with the god. The ceiling of the sanctuary is decorated with astronomical scenes, stars and vultures, common in moon god temples emphasizing the nocturnal sky. Khonsu's temple is adorned throughout with hieroglyphic inscriptions and relief carvings. Many depict Khonsu in his typical form, as a mummified young man with a sidelock of youth, holding a crook and flail, and often with a moon disk atop a crescent on his head. In some scenes, he has a falcon head, assimilated to Horus, also crowned by the crescent moon. The theological messaging often celebrates Khonsu attributes as the traveler, god of time, and healer. One notable text associated with Khonsu is the story on the Bentres Stellar, found in the Khonsu temple's vicinity, which recounts how Khonsu's statue was sent to a foreign land to heal a princess from demonic possession. This legend, though inscribed in Ptolemaic times on a stela discovered in 1829 near the temple, claims to take place in the time of Ramses II. It tells that Khonsu's power was able to exorcise a demon from the ill princess of Bakhtan, likely in Syria, after which Khonsu's statue stayed abroad for several years, performing miracles before magically flying back to Egypt. The fact it was found by Khonsu's temple shows that the temple probably held this stela for centuries as part of its religious lore, reinforcing Khonsu's image as a compassionate healer god who expels demons. The Karnak complex was primarily dedicated to Amun, but Khonsu's temple meant that the Theban triad, Amun, his consort Mut, and their son Khonsu, each had cult sanctuaries. Khonsu's role as the moon god complemented his father's role as a sun-related god, Amun-Re, and Mut's functions as mother goddess. Every day, priests would perform rituals in Khonsu's sanctuary. At dawn, they would break the seal of the previous day, open the shrine, light lamps and incense, and present offerings of food and drink to the statue, accompanied by hymns. At sunset, the statue was resealed in its shrine with fresh offerings left for the night. During festivals, Khonsu played a key part in processions. For instance, in the Opet festival, the statue of Khonsu would travel with Amun and Mut from Karnak to Luxor Temple to ceremonially rejuvenate the kingship. The Avenue of Sphinxes, starting at Khonsu's gate, emphasizes that Khonsu's idol likely left from this temple's front in its portable shrine carried on priests' shoulders. It sailed, or was carried, down the Nile to Luxor and back amid celebrations. The presence of numerous sphinxes lining the avenue suggests the sanctity of that route. So Khonsu's temple was not isolated. It was an integral node in the greater sacred geography of Thebes, connecting Karnak and Luxor. Khonsu's character as a moon god also had astral and magical dimensions. Egyptians observed that Khonsu, the moon, helped measure time. He controls the length of the night in texts. He also was sometimes feared as a bloodthirsty deity. In one myth, Khonsu is said to feast on human hearts during the night. But in Thebes, he was worshipped primarily as a benign son of Amun who helps the sick. Amulets and prescriptions for healing often invoked Khonsu. His temple might have received those seeking cures, similar to how Greco-Roman healing temples did. There's evidence that oracles were conducted at Karnak, possibly involving Khonsu's statue. For example, the story of the Bentres stela implies Khonsu's statue could nod or give signs. In some inscriptions, Khonsu is called Khonsu the Planmaker and Khonsu the Provider, suggesting protective aspects. The reliefs in Khonsu temples show classic New Kingdom style initially, and later less refined Ptolemaic additions. On the ceilings, one finds rows of painted flying vultures, symbol of protection, and astronomical ceilings with stars indicating the sky heaven theme appropriate for a moon god shrine. Baboons, who famously chatter at the sunrise, were often associated with welcoming the sun, hence linked to the moon cycle too. The two large baboon statues found in the hypostyle imply baboons may have flanked Khonsu's inner chapel, just as they do for other lunar or solar shrines. The presence of these animal sculptures is one distinctive feature. Many temples of similar size do not retain statuary, so their survival is notable. We also have records that under the Roman Empire, the Temple of Khonsu was still active and received upgrades. In fact, some thin Coptic inscriptions on the walls show that in Christian times, parts of it might have been used by monks or repurposed, but fortunately, not heavily defaced as happened to some pagan temples. The result is that Khonsu's temple is a rare gem. You could walk through it today and see pharaonic reliefs with original coloring and easily imagine the rituals once performed there. One interesting alignment question. Many Egyptian temples align to significant celestial points. Amun's main axis at Karnak famously points to the midwinter solstice sunrise. Khonsu's temple is rotated about 90 degrees from Amun's, aligning roughly to the southwest, toward Luxor Temple. Some have speculated if it might align with a lunar event, perhaps the moon's position on a certain day. However, a study of Egyptian temple alignments found Khonsu's sanctuary does not obviously align to a major lunar standstill or event. Ironically, another small temple at Karnak, the Ptah Temple, aligns with the extreme moonset position, not the Khonsu Temple. So in terms of ley lines or alignments, the Temple of Khonsu appears primarily orientated to integrate with the Theban ritual landscape rather than to the moon's cycle directly. It faces the route to Luxor Temple, facilitating the procession. Nonetheless, the entire Karnak complex itself is a powerhouse of ancient energy in the eyes of many modern spiritual tourists. Visitors today often remark on a feeling of awe or even a charge when walking through Karnak's precincts. The Khonsu Temple, being quieter and less visited than the main temple, can indeed feel like a serene, otherworldly spot at dusk with the moon rising above, perhaps allowing one to sense a glimmer of the divine presence the ancient priests cultivated there. The Temple of Khonsu was documented in detail by the University of Chicago's Epigraphic Survey in the late 1970s. They published 2 volumes of drawings and translations of its reliefs. In the early 2000s, the American Research Center in Egypt, ARCE, used the Khonsu Temple as a training site for conservation field schools. From 2006 to 2018, ARCE teams worked on cleaning and stabilizing the temple's sandstone walls and educating Egyptian conservators in the process. This effort has ensured the reliefs are now clearer and the structure is secure. In one instance, conservators performed cleaning tests to determine how to best remove soot and grime from the carved surfaces, revealing the bright original paint underneath. Tourists can visit the Khonsu temple as part of the Karnak site, though it is off to one side and sometimes overlooked. At times, it has been closed or only partially open, depending on restoration works. When it is open, one can walk through the entire floor plan. At night, Karnak Temple has a sound and light show, and Khonsu's temple, bathed in floodlights, looks particularly atmospheric, though it's not usually highlighted in the show's narration. However, some special events or experimental tourism projects have occurred. For example, in recent years, there have been art installations and even an opera performance in front of Khonsu's gateway, utilizing it as a dramatic backdrop. Unlike Huaca de la Luna or even Ur, where local legends persisted, the Temple of Khonsu's legends are mainly preserved ancient myths rather than post-pharaonic folklore. This tale underscores Khonsu's epitaph as Khonsu the Solver or Khonsu who determines fate and Khonsu the Good Restful One. In the Bentres Stela, two forms of Khonsu are invoked, suggesting Thebes actually worshipped Khonsu in slightly different aspects. Indeed, Karnak had two console chapels, one for Khonsu the Child and one for Khonsu the Provider, but the main temple, under discussion, was for Khonsu in general as part of the triad. One charming legend in Egyptian religion involving Khonsu is the legend of the Eye of Horus, or the contention of Thoth and Khonsu. In one version, Thoth, another moon god, gambles with Khonsu to win extra light for the moon to create the 5 epigomenal days of the calendar. Khonsu loses the bet and has to give away some moonlight. There is more of a theological explanation of why the moon wanes or loses weight. It shows that Egyptians had multiple lunar deities whose roles overlapped. In Thebes, Khonsu reigned as the lunar child of Amun, while in Hermopolis, Thoth was the more prominent. There is no evidence of open rivalry, but myths playfully pit them in contests of wits. In modern esoteric circles, Egyptian temples, including Khonsu's, are often thought to be built on power vortices or aligned with stars. Some fringe theorists claim Karnak is aligned with Orion's belt or other celestial markers. While Karnak's main axis is astronomically aligned to the solstice sunrise, Khonsu's temple is aligned to Luxor Temple, which in turn might align with the rising of certain stars during the Opet festival. There is a speculation that the Avenue of Sphinx's alignment might match the rising of the star Sirius or another key star when viewed from Luxor. However, precise studies haven't confirmed the direct Khonsu moon alignment. Nonetheless, because Khonsu is a moon god, visiting his temple under a full moon can be a moving experience, perhaps tapping into the ancient energy of moonlit rituals. The temple's small enclosed sanctuary also gives it a resonance and quiet that some visitors describe as spiritually charged. It is not uncommon for meditation groups or spiritually inclined tourists to gather near Khonsu's temple at off-peak times to soak in its ambience, away from the crowds at Amun's hypostyle hall. In conclusion, the Temple of Khonsu at Karnak may be lesser known, but it is a jewel of preservation that sheds light on Egyptian lunar worship and temple practice. Built by one of Egypt's great pharaohs and embellished by others for over a millennium, it stands almost complete, allowing us to walk the same floors as ancient priests. It testifies to the Egyptian devotion to order through ritual. Every wall scene of pharaoh offering to Khonsu reinforces the cosmic balance. The king gives mat, offerings of truth, to the gods, and the gods in return uphold creation. As a moon shrine, it highlights the Egyptian view of the moon as a beneficial renewing force. Khonsu brought the cool light and darkness, marked the passage of time, and could drive away malevolent spirits. That his temple was a part of Karnak shows the inclusiveness of Egyptian religion. The great state god Amun was incomplete without his family, and the moon god's son had his vital place in the divine ecology of Thebes. Today, preserved and conserved, Khonsu's temple continues quietly fulfilling its role as a place of sanctuary and mystery, inviting us to reflect on the rhythms of time and the ancient quest for healing and divine communion under the silvery moon. As we leave the Temple of Khonsu, we have one last stop before we wrap this up: the Pyramid of the Moon, in Teotihuacan, Mexico. On the northern end of the broad Avenue of the Dead in Teotihuacan stands the Pyramid of the Moon, a grand pyramid that has captivated visitors for centuries. Built nearly 2,000 years ago by the Teotihuacan civilization, this pyramid temple was central to the city's ceremonial life. The Pyramid of the Moon is the second largest pyramid in Teotihuacan, slightly smaller than the Pyramid of the Sun, and it mimics the shape of the mountain Cerro Gordo looming directly behind it. This deliberate alignment with the mountain gave the pyramid a powerful backdrop and suggests a sacred synchronization of architecture with natural landscape, a hallmark of Teotihuacan urban design. Teotihuacan was a thriving metropolis between 100 BCE and 550 CE, reaching its height around 300 to 450 CE when it had an estimated 100 to 125,000 residents. Remarkably, by that time, it was one of the largest cities in the world and certainly the largest in the Americas. The Pyramid of the Moon was among the earliest and continuously developed structures in the city. Archaeological evidence shows that an initial version of the pyramid, a small platform, existed by around 100 CE, even predating the larger Pyramid of the Sun. Over the next few centuries, the Pyramid of the Moon was enlarged in several construction phases, perhaps 7 phases in total, each new layer enveloping the previous one, much like the Mochi's Huaca de la Lunar or a Russian doll. By 250 to 300 CE, it reached its final form, a massive pyramid about 43 meters tall, with a base roughly 150 by 130 meters, comprised of a series of sloping terraces and broad staircases facing south along the Avenue of the Dead. The pyramid, along with a large plaza in the front of it, the Plaza of the Moon, created a grand ceremonial zone at Teotihuacan's north end. This layout completed the city's master plan's bilateral symmetry around the avenue. Teotihuacan's urban planners were highly organized. The entire city was aligned about 15.5 degrees east of north, an orientation whose purpose is still debated but may relate to astronomical alignments. Some studies suggest it aligns with the setting of the Pleiades or certain sun positions or geographic coordinates. In any case, the Pyramid of the Moon perfectly closes the vista when looking north up the avenue, rising at the foot of the mountain like a man-made extension of it. This suggests that, like other ancient cultures, Teotihuacanos revered the local mountain, Cerro Gordo, perhaps as a source of water, springs, or as a sacred ancestor, and built the pyramid to honor or interface with that sacred mountain spirit. The Aztecs, much later, revered to Cerro Gordo as Tenin, meaning mother, protective stone, indicating they sensed a maternal protective quality in the mountain and the pyramid which mimicked it. Teotihuacan left no written records, at least none that we can read since they didn't use a known writing system like the Maya did. However, the Pyramid of the Moon's function can be inferred from its design and contents. It appears to have been used for rituals including sacrifices and burials of high-status individuals. At the summit was a temple structure, now vanished, likely made of perishable wood and thatch above a stone platform. From that temple, priests would have performed ceremonies visible to the crowds assembled in the Plaza of the Moon below. Archaeologists have excavated the pyramid's interior via tunnels and found several ritual offering caches and tombs embedded within the successive construction layers. For example, in 1988, a rich burial, often dubbed Burial 6, was found at the center of the fourth phase of the pyramid, containing a human male skeleton surrounded by grave goods and sacrificial offerings, bound animals, pumas, eagles, a wolf, and human sacrifices, as well as hundreds of artifacts like obsidian blades and jade figurines. These animals were likely symbolic. Pumas and eagles may represent martial or solar imagery, indicating the individual buried might have been a warrior or even a ruler perceived as an embodiment of divine forces. One intriguing discovery, announced in 2017, was the finding of a tunnel underneath the Pyramid of the Moon that extends from the central plaza to beneath the pyramid. Using electrical resistivity and CT scans, researchers detected a hollow passage about 10 meters underground running towards the pyramid center. This mirrors similar tunnels found under the Pyramid of the Sun and the Temple of the Feathered Serpent at Teotihuacan. Scholars believe these tunnels were deliberately crafted spaces, likely meant to represent the Teotihuacan underworld, a realm of creation and origin. In Mesoamerican cosmology, caves and tunnels often symbolize the womb of the earth or the entrance to the underworld. The fact that such a tunnel exists under the moon pyramid strongly suggests that the pyramid was conceptualized as an artificial mountain with a cave. Some have even speculated there might have been a natural lava tube or cave on the site that the builders incorporated. In 2020, further exploration revealed possible chambers with offerings deep beneath the pyramid. These could have been ritual caches where precious objects, including perhaps symbolic offerings like rare flowers or obsidian blades, were left to sanctify the space. In 2022, it was reported that flower bouquets, nearly 1,800 years old, were found in a tunnel under the nearby Feathered Serpent Pyramid, showing the kind of perishable offerings they used. It's easy to imagine that a similar practice happened under the Pyramid of the Moon, offerings to ensure the mountain pyramid delivered abundance and communicated with the underworld. Above ground, ceremonies at the Pyramid of the Moon are likely related to the city's central deity. While popularly called a moon pyramid, many archaeologists believe it was actually dedicated to what we call the Great Goddess of Teotihuacan. This unnamed goddess is depicted in murals as a front-facing elaborate figure with a headdress from which flows water and bounty. She is associated with fertility, rain, and the earth, essentially a Mother Earth or Mother Nature figure. Supporting this, a colossal statue over 3 meters high was discovered near the Pyramid of the Moon in the 19th century. This statue, known as the Goddess of Teotihuacan, portrays a female deity with outstretched arms and a heavy, square headdress and is thought to represent the great goddess of water and fertility. The Aztecs, upon seeing it, apparently linked it to their moon or earth goddess. One Spanish report suggests there was once a giant stone idol of the moon on the pyramid. Excavations did uncover a 22-ton sculpture which scholars identify as the great goddess in water deity form, that likely once stood atop or in front of the pyramid. So while we use the term Pyramid of the Moon, it might be more accurate that this was a temple of the city female deity of Teotihuacan, who had lunar aspects as well as terrestrial ones. It is possible the moon cycles were celebrated here insofar as they related to agricultural timing or the goddess's cycles, but direct evidence of lunar observation is less clear in Teotihuacan than among the Maya. The name Pyramid of the Moon itself is Aztec in origin. The Aztecs, arriving 700 years after Teotihuacan's fall, named the site Teotihuacan, City of Gods, and called the pyramid Sun and Moon because they thought these were shrines to those celestial bodies. We follow their naming for convenience. As noted, the pyramid functioned as a monumental tomb for Teotihuacan's elite or sacrificial victims. Several entombments have been documented. In one offering, 2 decapitated large cats, possibly jaguars or pumas, were buried with an array of greenstone figurines and obsidian spear points, clearly a dedicatory offering. Other tombs had human skeletons positioned in unusual ways. One burial pit contained 4 humans in cross-legged seated pose, perhaps sacrificed individuals intended to accompany or guard something. The combination of humans, animals, and fine objects suggests a ritual of consecration each time the pyramid was enlarged. They would bury a cache in the heart of the new layer, possibly an offering to the gods for allowing the structure to grow. By killing or sacrificing valuable lives and goods, they spiritually activated the new pyramid stage. This was common in Mesoamerica, the idea of feeding the building or earth with blood to empower it. The fact that high-status individuals might be buried here suggests the pyramid could also have been a royal mausoleum or ceremonial burial ground for Teotihuacan leaders, whom we frustratingly know little about. Teotihuacan's power structure is still mysterious. No obvious kings like the Maya had, but someone clearly organized things. Some theorize the individual in Burial 6 was a foreign royal or a local ruler given extraordinary burial. Isotope analysis of some buried remains indicates not all were local. Some may have been foreign nobles or war captives given special burial. This ties into evidence of Teotihuacan's wide influence. Around 378 CE, Teotihuacan evidently intervened in distant Mayan cities like Tikal, Guatemala. It's interesting to consider that some individuals interred at the moon pyramid might have been part of those far-flung political networks. While called the moon pyramid, it's important to note any direct lunar alignments. Teotihuacan's grid alignment at 15.5 off north is such that if you stand in the plaza of the moon and look along the Avenue of the Dead at certain times, you might see the sun setting or certain stars aligning with the pyramids. Some researchers have proposed that the Temple of the Moon aligns with the setting sun on August 12th, a date roughly corresponding to the maize harvest and also the base date of the Maya long count, speculatively. However, more securely, it's aligned with Cerro Gordo. One could say the pyramid's orientation is landscape astronomy, aligning man-made cosmos with natural cosmos. As for ley lines or earth grids, Teotihuacan is often mentioned in such speculative theories. It is said to be on a line with other sites like Easter Island and Giza in some alternative mapping, though this is not scientifically recognized. What is factual is Teotihuacan's careful internal geomancy. Its central street and pyramids form geometric and perhaps cosmological relationships. Some see the distances between certain landmarks as correlating to planetary or calendrical numbers. Units along the avenue might encode 260, the sacred calendar days. The Pyramid of the Moon's position was the terminus of that scheme, possibly representing the origin point. In the worldview, maybe the Cerro Gordo behind it was seen as the sacred hill of sustenance from which humans emerged. Mesoamerican creation myths often involve people emerging from a cave inside a mountain. So this pyramid may mark that mythical place of emergence. Incidentally, the Aztecs indeed believed Teotihuacan was where the gods gathered to create the sun and moon of the current world. One Aztec myth holds that two gods sacrificed themselves at Teotihuacan, one becoming the sun and another the moon. This shows how later people interpreted the site as tied to cosmic genesis, which is fitting given the likely use of the pyramids for observation and cosmology. Thus, in lore, the Pyramid of the Moon had a huge role. It was essentially the site of the creation of the moon in Aztec eyes, hence the name. One can imagine on certain nights, maybe when the full moon rose over the mountain behind, ancient ceremonies might have celebrated the moon's power. A grand fire at the pyramid's top, flickering against the night sky with drumming echoing down the avenue, might have been a part of rituals for the lunar goddess or the great goddess of water. Professional excavation at Teotihuacan began in the late 19th and early 20th century. Major tunneling into the moon pyramid was done in the 1950s by Mexican archaeologists. In the 1970s to 80s, extensive projects uncovered the buried offerings. Most recently, the discovery of the subterranean tunnel in 2017 has excited scholars as technology reveals features without digging. Work is ongoing to explore that tunnel. As noted, it may contain a chamber at the end directly under the pyramid's center, potentially analogous to the Mercury River and golden orbs found under the Feathered Serpent Pyramid's tunnel. If so, extraordinary treasures of symbolism might still lie hidden there. Teotihuacan is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the most visited archaeological sites in the Americas, over 4 million tourists a year. The Pyramid of the Moon can be climbed part way. In recent years, access is sometimes limited to the first tier for preservation. The panoramic view from its steps allow one to survey the entire avenue and imagine the ancient city. It remains in the public eye as a place of wonder and sometimes of New Age ritual. Every year at the spring equinox, thousands of people flock to Teotihuacan, especially the Sun Pyramid, to soak up the energy of the new sun, many dressed in white and raising arms to the sky. Although the Sun Pyramid gets the bulk of equinox celebrants, the Moon Pyramid's plaza also fills with overflow crowds meditating or performing indigenous dance. They believe Teotihuacan sits at a convergence of powers. New Age lore sometimes cites that a line of earth energy runs through the site, while ley lines, in the strict sense, straight lines through multiple sites, aren't scientifically demonstrable here. Teotihuacan's grid likely does align to astronomical events important to its builders. For instance, research in archaeoastronomy has shown various structures align with the sun on certain dates or with constellation positions. There's speculation that the 15.5 degrees orientation is related to the latitude such that on May 19th and July 25th, the sun is directly over the site, the zenith passages. These dates may have had significance. The Aztecs' mythic associations already show one layer of legacy. In Aztec times, Teotihuacan was revered and visited by pilgrims. Aztec rulers would perform rituals to claim Teotihuacan's lineage. They literally saw it as built by gods. The name of the city itself means place where men became gods, or birthplace of the gods. One Aztec poem calls the pyramids the tombs of the sun and moon. While not exactly miracles, these myths gave a supernatural aura to the pyramids. Even in colonial times, Spanish friars speculated on who built them, some thinking they were the Tower of Babel or built by biblical giants. Local Mexican folklore in later centuries imagined that pyramids were constructed by a race of giants, which aligned with the name given in Nahuatl. For modern Mexican identity, Teotihuacan, including the Moon Pyramid, is an emblem of the nation's deep indigenous roots. It appears on murals, postage stamps, and tourist logos. An impressive recent event was in 2020 when, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the site was empty of tourists on the spring equinox for the first time in decades, and the image of an empty pyramid of the moon under the sun was striking in the news. A reminder of how these ancient places endure even when human activity pauses. To summarize, the temple, or pyramid, of the moon at Teotihuacan was a multifunctional sacred center. It anchored the city's north end, served as the stage for public rituals, housed burial offerings and sacrifices to sanctify each enlargement, and likely honored a great mother goddess figure associated by later peoples with the moon. Its physical and spiritual design linked the city to the natural world through the mountain and cave symbolism, and to the cosmos through citywide orientation. When Teotihuacan mysteriously declined, the city was sacked and burned around 550 CE, possibly by eternal uprising or foreign invasion. The Pyramid of the Moon likely saw its temple destroyed or abandoned. But the pyramid itself, being stone, survived the centuries. It's weathered into a steep hill covered in soil and shrubs until it was cleared in the 20th century. Now restored to its pyramidal form, it stands as a monument to a lost civilization's grandeur. From the Moki and their mountain god in Peru, to the Sumerians venerating the moon in Ur, to the Egyptians worshipping Khonsu, and the Teotihuacans building pyramids to their cosmic gods, we see a common thread. Humanity seeking connection with celestial cycle and sacred landscapes through architecture and ritual. Each of these moon temples is unique to its culture and beliefs, yet all were focal points of faith, enacting the rhythms of nature, whether the lunar month, the rainy season, or the night sky, in built form. They were places where myth and reality met, where gods were invited to dwell among mortals, sacrifices were made to sustain the world, and communities gathered to witness and partake in the mystery of the divine. Across the ancient world, cultures separated by oceans and millennia converged on a similar idea, building monumental structures to bridge earth and sky, humanity and the divine. The four sacred sites we explored, Huaca de la Luna, the Ziggurat of Ur, the Temple of Khonsu, and the Pyramid of the Moon each arose from distinct civilizations, Moki, Sumerian, Egyptian, Teotihuacano, with their own religious pantheos and worldviews. Yet in each case, the society poured immense resources and ingenuity into creating a holy sanctuary dedicated to cosmic powers, often personified as moon deities or celestial phenomena. These structures serve not only as a place of worship, but as an axis mundi, the spiritual centers of their world where heaven's influence touched the earth. From the vantage of Huaca de la Luna's blood-stained plazas, we saw a people attempting to secure life's continuity through sacrifice, painting their myths on adobe walls and venerating a mountain as a savior. In Ur, climbing the ziggurat's steep stairs in our mind's eye, we imagine Sumerian priests greeting the rising moon atop a man-made mountain, confident that their city's prosperity flowed from the bond between king, temple, and god. At Karnak, we walk through the shadows of Khonsu's temple, feeling the quiet devotion of Egyptian ritual, the air thick with incense as the moon child, or traveler, is invoked for healing and protection. And in Teotihuacan's Plaza of the Moon, we stood amid echoes of distant ceremonies, perhaps the pounding of drums and processions of priests carrying offerings of jade and quetzal feathers to honor the great goddess and the newly born moon, all under the watchful silhouette of a sacred mountain. Each site is layered with history and legend. Over centuries, they accrued new meanings. Aztec priests weaving Teotihuacan into their origin myths as a place of sun and moon creation. Islamic and Christian thinkers linking Ur to Abraham's story as a crucible of monotheism. Local Peruvian folklore keeping alive Moqui tales of God and monsters at Cerro Blanco, and Greco-Roman travelers in Luxor marveling at Khonsu's shrine even as they identified him with their own moon gods. These confluences of myth underscore a human tendency to see sacred places as enduring nodes of power, regardless of who is telling the story. The structures themselves became storytellers, ruins that spoke of golden ages and divine acts. Modern science and archaeology have peeled back the mysteries to a great extent. Isotope analysis tells us who was sacrificed at Huaca de la Luna. Cuneiform texts and bricks let us reconstruct the ziggurats, builders, and dimensions. Hieroglyphs and stelae enable us to read of Khonsu's miraculous healing of a faraway princess, and LiDAR scans reveal hidden tunnels beneath Teotihuacan's pyramids, confirming old myths about sacred caves. Academic papers and excavations have transformed these once enigmatic mounds and ruins into well-contextualized historical monuments. And yet something occult, hidden, or numinous remains about them. They continue to intrigue not just historians, but also spiritual seekers and imaginative thinkers. The idea of ley lines connecting them, while not scientifically proven, symbolizes our intuition that these hallowed sites might be connected in some grand tapestry of earth energies or ancient knowledge. It's testament to their enduring aura that people today meditate on the moon pyramid to feel vibrations or speculate that a global grid links Ur, Giza, Mohenjo-Daro, and Stonehenge in some forgotten geomancy. At the very least, we could say each site was deliberately aligned with its local landscape to points of significance, be it a mountain, the cardinal directions, or the path of the sun and the moon. So the idea of alignments isn't modern fancy but original intent, even if not global in scale. In a poetic sense, these ancient architects were the first astronomers and geomancers, laying down ley lines of their own by aligning temples to solstices, lunar standstills, or sacred mountains. For example, the Karnak complex's solstice axis and Teotihuacan's mountain horizon alignment show a keen desire to integrate the heavens with human construction. Through such alignments, the sites themselves become cosmic instruments, mapping the sky on Earth, an idea that resonates with modern observers who stand at these spots and feel connected to something bigger, whether cultural heritage or the universe itself. In modern usage, these sites have transitioned to roles as museums, tourist attractions, and symbols of national and regional identity. They no longer witness sacrifices or imperial rituals, but they do host crowds seeking meaning, education, or inspiration. The Pope's Prayer at Ur in 2021, or the annual spring equinox gathering at Teotihuacan, shows that they still function as interfaith or intercultural sacred spaces, capable of bringing people together in awe and hope. Archaeological projects ensure they are preserved for future generations, bridging the gap between scientific understanding and public engagement. Every year, new findings, like the discovery of that tunnel under the moon pyramid or genetic analysis of Moqui remains, add chapters to their story. Meanwhile, local communities around these sites often take pride in them and sometimes fuse ancient lore with contemporary culture, such as Peruvian shamans performing ceremonies at Huaca de Moqui or Iraqi guides passionately recounting the Epic of Gilgamesh to visitors at Ur. In reflecting on moon temples collectively, one is struck by how the moon, our planet's luminous companion, has inspired humanity globally. The moon's gentle light and ever-changing phases made it a natural symbol of cycles: birth, growth, decay, rebirth. These temples are physical manifestations of cyclical time and eternal return. The Moqui responded to the moon with offerings of blood to renew fertility. The Egyptians mythologized the moon as a child, Khonsu, who marked the passage of months and could drive out darkness or illness. The Teotihuacans possibly saw the moon as part of duality with the sun, needing to be balanced through great ceremonies in their city of the gods. In all, the moon served as a celestial intermediary, and these structures in turn served as terrestrial intermediaries between people and the mysterious forces governing their existence. Finally, academically, there is a wealth of scholarship on each of these sites. We cited only a slice. Archaeologists like Verano and Toyne for Moki, Woolley and others for Ur, the Epigraphic Survey for Khonsu's reliefs, and Sugiyama or Cabrera for Teotihuacan. They have published extensive studies analyzing architecture, artifacts, and human remains, which ground our understanding in evidence. These studies sometimes read like detective stories, reconstructing ritual scenes from bones and pottery, and in a sense, the ongoing research at these temples is our modern ritual of inquiry, an offering of human intellect to the temple of knowledge, seeking blessings in the form of insight. As we continue to uncover their secrets, we also continue to be humbled by the sophistication and devotion of those who built them long ago. Each site stands as a monument to the human spirit, our capacity to create, to believe, to organize ourselves around higher ideals, and to leave behind great testaments in stone, brick, and earth that far outlast our individual lives. In an era where electric lights dim our view of the moon, and modern life can make us feel disconnected from nature, these ancient moon temples invite us to look up again at the night sky, to imagine the drumbeats and chants under pale moonlight, and to ponder our place in the grand cycle of time. In an era where electric lights dim our view of the moon and modern life can make us feel disconnected from nature, these ancient moon temples invite us to look up again at the night sky, to imagine the drumbeats and chants under the pale moonlight, and to ponder our place in the grand cycle of time. They remind us that the pursuit of the divine, whether through blood sacrifice, prayer, art, or science, is a defining and unifying trait of humanity. And as long as the moon continues to wax and wane above, casting its silvery glow on the Huaca de la Luna adobe ramps, on Ur's rugged ziggurat walls, through the column of Khonsu's court, and over the pyramid of the moon's stone steps, we remain connected to the ancients. The temple's legends and discoveries continue to enlighten and inspire like moonlight itself, gentle, persistent, and magically touching all corners of the world. And that is the end of sacred moon temples across time and culture. Hope you all enjoyed this one and look forward to covering more in the future. Everybody be well, and until the next one.